All right, so did the recording buttons come on? All right, so we are welcoming you to session 4 on Friday. We have Kaylee Port for the 4-H online update. Kaylee is the data systems and evaluation manager, program manager for the Ohio 4-H. She manages the 4-H online enrollment database and provides support to county and state staff in the management of all 4-H enrollment data. When not actively working in the database or assisting other staff with data challenges, she conducts surveys to gauge 4-H programming efficiency and advises on program evaluation measures. Okay, welcome, Kaylee. Just a few other updates here. The session is being recorded. Mics have been muted. The session is 1 hour, I believe. And please use chat for all questions, and hopefully refreshments and restrooms are nearby. And I'll let Kaylee get started by stopping my screen share.
Thank you, Chris. I will start mine. All righty, and I'm going to also turn off my video. All right. So I'm going to be going over some 4-H online updates and a brief group enrollment tutorial. A lot of you who have came to my recent Tuesday office hour sessions, a lot of this might be review for you, but I'm sure there's some who have not been on office hours that are here today that this information will be useful for. So forgive me if it's repetitive and boring, but you know, maybe the repetition will help some of the information settle in a little bit better. So advance my, there we go. So we're going to be covering some information about year-end cleanup, ways to prepare for the upcoming program year 2021-22, and then we'll go over group enrollment and some updates and notes about group enrollment, and then we'll do a walkthrough of how to put in a group enrollment at your county level. So real briefly for year-end cleanup, ideally, we would like to get as many member profiles merged as possible. That ability is only available to institution level managers. So once you have identified what members you have that are duplicates, I know many counties have gone through and like marked them by name. You know, it might say John duplicate for the first name and Smith for the last name, or John for the first name, Smith duplicate or dupe or to be deleted or something. So once you identify what members you have that are duplicates, and this includes any member that's in the 4-H online system, so that can be an archived member, it can be an enrolled member, it can be a member that's not enrolled but has been in the past, just isn't this year. We can merge all of those. So once you identify who those members are, please contact your area wrangler with the list of member profiles that need to be merged. And they have the ability, as well as myself, you can also send the list to me. I can help out with that as well. We need to get those merged up. There are a few profiles that are not merging properly. We have yet to figure out what that common issue is, but Registration Max has been made aware of the glitch in the system, and they too are trying to figure out why certain member profiles just refuse to merge. They're few and far between, but you know, just if you run into that, and if your wrangler can't for some reason merge some of your members, that is why, and that we will take care of that as soon as Registration Max can help figure out what's holding those up. Deleting members. So at the county level, you have the ability to delete member profiles. The caveat is that the members can have no enrollment history. The members can only be deleted if they have no enrollment history. So if you have someone who created a duplicate account this year, and you know that it's a duplicate account, there's no reason to have that merged if you never approved them. So basically, a lot of the incompletes that you might have can be deleted, and any of them that are submitted that are duplicates just this year, that were just created this year that you did not approve, can be deleted. Just remember that anyone with an enrollment history has to stay. So the feature won't be available if there's an enrollment history tied to the specific profile. Now, when merging happens, the profile that we don't want to keep automatically deletes once it's joined with the good profile that we do want during the merge. So that takes care of those. But if you had someone who truly this year created a new profile but never fully enrolled with it, was never fully approved, you have the option to delete those. And basically right here within the members profile area under the 4H tab, this person specifically was marked as incomplete, but you can delete them here. So you are welcome to delete any member who does not have enrollment history tied to them. And it'll ask you to confirm that you want to delete the individual's profile. You'll hit yes. This does not delete families. So right now, the family will still sit there, and I've got a way that we can kind of sort of combat that issue here in a few slides. But for right now, it doesn't delete the family that was created. It just deletes the duplicated profile. So again, the ones with no enrollment history don't need to be merged. If it has an enrollment history, you'll have to have it merged by your area wrangler with the good profile. Additionally, for year-end cleanup, was everyone approved? Check your awaiting review tab where you would go in normally and approve your enrollments. Double check your awaiting review tab. If you have any outstanding either adult volunteers or members that are needing to be approved for the current program year, maybe they got maybe they got in late, or maybe more specifically, we were able to push through a BCI screening for a volunteer, and now they're on your awaiting review list. If they are to get credit for this program year and you see a clock by their name, you can go ahead and approve those if you want them to be credited for participating this year. A note, which most of you already know, some volunteers might still be tied up with their BCI screenings, and we can't approve those. You can't approve those at the county level until they're approved at the state level. So those people, you're not going to be able to advance through enrollment, but the ones that we've recently pushed through, just double check your awaiting review tab and push through anybody that you can that should have credit for this year so that it doesn't show up as a gap in service next year. As far as those volunteers needing approval, if you have a volunteer that still needs approval, screening approval, excuse me, and you have a copy of the receipt, the copy of the receipt is the key here. If you have a copy of the receipt that they went and had it done, but are still waiting on BCI OHR approval, send myself or Jeff Dick an email with the name and the receipt. And we will be able to push those individuals through so that they get credited for this year, so that we're not penalizing the volunteers who are attempting to have their screenings done. However, if you don't have a receipt that proves that they went and even had it done, we will not push those through. We will keep a list of these volunteers, and then when their BCI screenings do show up or they go to get them again, we'll at least have an idea of who those people were so that we can just keep tabs from a risk management standpoint. So if you have a copy, then we can push them through. So preparing for program year 2021-22. One way that I think might help cut down on the number of duplicates would be to, prior to letting your families know that it's enrollment time. And I know most of you don't start this, right on November 1st. So when you start telling your families that it's time to enroll, prior to that, I would send out some sort of correspondence, whether it be by snail mail or email, or post it onto your county Facebook page, wherever. But I would ask your families to contact your office if they've made any changes to their physical address, their email, if they're unsure of the email that they used when they signed up for 4HOnline, if they've had a legal name change, if they got married, if they got divorced, if they just changed their name. That's especially important for our volunteers. A change of family status, if there's a divorce and then, we're worried that we've got one family profile, the kid has a profile, but in the next program year, we don't want one of the parents creating a new profile for them because now they have custody. So we just need to make sure that there's just that one profile. Change of phone number, this is important because the phone number is what's used for retrieving passwords. So however you choose to do this, and if you choose to do it, I would recommend trying to gather that information before you let everybody start, having a mad dash for enrollment, just so that we can try to cut down on the number of duplicates that are created in the next program year. Again, it's not a requirement that you do that. I'm just thinking it might be a way to help. November 1st is when enrollment opens for the 2021-22 program year. If you have any new people, new volunteers specifically for next year, do not enroll them prior to November 1st, because if they're enrolled prior to November 1st and get approved in the system, then they'll be credited for being enrolled this year. And if they're new, then their years of service and the actual years in which they have participated aren't going to match up. That being said, please encourage your volunteers to wait until after November 1st to obtain their BCI screening. Again, this helps us keep the BCI screening within the program year constraints of November 1st through October 31st. It just helps match everything up so that it doesn't appear that there were gaps in service. Even if there weren't, it helps keep the database a little bit cleaner that way. I know there are some counties that need this information about their new volunteers with a pretty quick turnaround up against that November 1 enrollment date. I think I've reached out and I've spoken with those counties. And feel free to email me if you have questions about that. But for the most part, there should only be about 5 counties that are really up against that really tight deadline when it comes to dealing with the volunteers, and we can help those counties with that. Additionally, preparing for the next program year, we want to make sure that any of the members that we have in the system and with enrolled profiles, if they participated in any groups, for example, camp is a group, you had a kid that was a camper in addition to being in a community club, we need to make sure that we're getting those groups marked on the individual member profiles. Please focus on using state groups. I sent out an email through 4HOnline on 9/29 with an attachment that listed all the different state groups. You have a plethora of state groups to choose from, but please use those as a way to add groups to member profiles. Unfortunately, unlike in 1.0, there's no mass flagging option where you can flag a bunch of people and then add them to a group all at once. So this does have to be done within the individual's profile. I know that it's a big ask. It's unfortunate that the flagging and mass add option is not there yet, but that's where we are. That can't be fixed right now. So, the more data that you can put in, the better, so that we have a better total picture of how people are participating in our programming. If you don't add any of these kids to camps within their profiles, we don't get accurate camp numbers. The group enrollments are great for capturing those participants that are not enrolled through 4HOnline that we don't already have a profile for. But the kids that are in the system, unlike 1.0, we can't create a group enrollment from a group. So at the end of the program year, I'll be going through and running reports for all the different groups and trying to find out what our participation looks like based on how every individual has had a group added to their profile. Again, I understand that it's a big ask. I just ask that you do what you can with the good data that you have. I don't know when they're going to be adding a mass flagging option. So, is there a question in the chat? Rachel, for state camps, county camps, you should be able to just choose any kind of camp. Like it doesn't necessarily, I mean, if it's a county camp, you can just choose off of the state list overnight camp. Like it doesn't specify that it's state or county. The only part that is state is so that it's accessible to everybody to choose from, is what makes it a state level anything. So even if it was a county camp, you can mark them as attending just overnight camp or day camp or Cloverbud camp or whatever, regardless of whether it's state run or county run. Does that make sense, Rachel?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just was a little bit confused if you meant if they had gone to the state camp or if it was like the kids that we had in our county. So yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, great, thanks. So similarly to adding groups to member profiles, we also want to make sure that we are recording trainings for anybody that needs a training on file. So any members or volunteers that need credit for a specific training this year, we need to make sure that we're marking that in their profiles. Again, this has to be done on an individual basis, no flagging with a mass add option. What you'll do is you'll go into the member profile area or the member area down at the very, very bottom of the left navigation pane. It's kind of hidden by the accessibility icon, but that says trainings right there. When you click on that, it will bring this up for you, and you can choose the blue record training button that I've got highlighted in yellow. From there, any of the trainings, 1.50, occasional cooks, QA test outs, any of that stuff are available to choose from when you click on record training. So if someone has to have credit for that this year, please make sure it gets marked on their profile so that we have a way to track it. Okay, so group enrollment, demonstrations, updates. Again, we use group enrollments for capturing participants that we aren't already following within the 4HOnline database. So kids who don't already have approved enrollments in a community club of some sort. So these are the kids that maybe attend camps, and that's the only type of participation they have with 4-H. Maybe this is you getting invited in to present or spend a day with the third graders at one of your elementary schools. That's where we're going to capture all of those kids, is through a group enrollment. One thing to remember is that the program that you put on, you need to have at least 6 contact hours for it to count as a group enrollment. The only exception to that 6-hour rule is car teams. I did check with Kirk, and if you run car teams in your county, you can put a group enrollment in for that, even though it did not take 6 hours. There wasn't 6 hours of contact time. That is the only exception to the 6-hour rule. When I go through how to put in a group enrollment, you'll notice that there's a delivery mode called 4-H Special Interest Short-Term Program Non-Spin Club. There's one delivery mode for spin clubs. There's another one for non-spin clubs. So if it's not operating and truly functioning like a spin club, but it was a 1 day, whole day thing, but it didn't meet the criteria to be an actual spin club, you would use the non-spin club delivery mode for that program. With the group enrollments, you can add any projects that you used to help run your program. You can add multiple projects. You don't have to add any projects. So that's a good way to sort of see how we're using our curriculum within our different programming outside of a traditional project that kids would pick in their community club. There's also within the various gender, race, ethnicity, age or grade, I guess, distributions, there's now an unidentified option, and I'll show you how that works when we do the demo. One thing that's super, super important is that we are not allowed to guess. And I'll show you that once we get to the distribution section within the group enrollment database. We can't just go by what we see with our eyes. So what walks like a duck, talks like a duck, sounds like a duck might not be a duck. So we can't just assume that we're dealing with ducks. So all of the group enrollments also need to be entered by October 31st at 11:59 p.m. So basically you have until the end of the program year to get those in. I know a lot of counties already have theirs in, and I greatly appreciate that. But those of you who haven't started yet or are just now realizing that you need to do this, you have until October 31st, end of the day, basically, to finish those. Let's see. As always, before I get into the demonstration, if you have questions, shoot me an email, call me. I'm usually on Skype. Reach out to your area wrangler. I will try to communicate any important changes to the 4HOnline system as I become aware of them. A lot of the recent updates to the 4HOnline system that Registration Max has been working on tend to focus a lot around the financial portion of the database, which Ohio does not use. So some of the information that we would really like to have, or some of the parts of the database that we would like to have working better or differently, have recently been backburnered so that the financial aspects of the database can be fixed for the majority of the other states that are using the program. Especially with re-enrollments happening and kids having to pay dues and things like that, those financials were added as more of a priority item. But when changes are made or new and exciting things happen in the database that'll help make your life easier, I will do my best to communicate those to you as they come up. So do you have any questions prior to me jumping in and doing a group enrollment demo. I know my presentation is not going to take a full hour, but I wanted to have plenty of time to show you how to do this and allow you to ask questions once I finish the group enrollment demo. But other than what, from what I've already shared with you, as far as preparing for rollover and cleanup, do you guys have any questions or need clarification on anything?
I have a question, Kaylee.
Mhm.
So when it comes to entering trainings for volunteers, is there more that's required for us to enter beyond the 1.50 trainings?
No.
Okay.
No. So the only one that's required are the 1.50 trainings. Those are the only ones that are required of our volunteers. You know, some counties require other trainings that other counties don't. So that won't apply to everybody across the board. The only training that does apply across the board that we need to have on file is the 1.50. And specifically the ones that are, like I said, I know that that's a big ask. Your focus should be the ones that are done in person. Since we technically have a way to pull that information of the ones that were done online. So if you have a huge number of those volunteers that you need to record trainings for, your focus should be on those that had in-person training. That should be your priority for the 1.50 training. Any other questions to prepare for rollover, cleanup, anything like that before we move into the group enrollment demonstration?
There's a few questions in chat. And I don't know, this one, if somebody has their volunteers in a spreadsheet for attending the youth protection training, is that good enough for tracking, or do they have to put them in for 4HOnline?
If it was an in-person training, it needs to be put into 4HOnline if it was the 1.50.
Okay, and is there an easy way to find members with no enrollment history? Is there a list out there in the system for which ones to consider deleting, or?
I can create a report that will show you that. Pretty much, let me share one of my other screens real quick. It might help to physically see this rather than me just trying to explain it. Shares. Where is it? There we are. Okay. Let me get this out of the way. Okay. I can set up a report that will help with that. Until I make it, I can't guarantee what it's going to look like. But a way to tell if someone has enrollment history, you can look to see, or if you want to make your own report, you can look to see how many years in the program they have. If it's 0, then they don't have enrollment history. So that's a good way to identify those. I don't know. Let's see. So when you, if you want to make one on your own, or wait till I make it and then share it with everybody, under report columns for participation, you should be able to scroll all the way down to the bottom and get to years in program. And you can make that be a column on your report. And if it says 0, it means they don't have any enrollment history yet. And so what that would look like then in a member profile, we'll use this one, for example. When you look at the members, let Okay, specifically on ones that are awaiting review that have yet to be approved. When you look at their enrollment tab up here, there's a drop down. It says 2020, 2021. That means they have no prior enrollment history if there's nothing else in the drop down area. So this person would be able to be deleted. Since they're in they're under review right now or awaiting review, you'd have to do a send back and delete option on there. But your area wranglers can help with that, or I can help with that if you have a big long list of those people that need cleaned up. Is there another one in there, Chris? If we have youth go to camp that are not in 4-H, do we add them? That is how you're going to add those people, Leanna, through a group enrollment. And I'll show you guys how to do that. We'll do that next. So I will start from my county homepage. So right now I'm logged in under the training county. Your homepage would look very similar to this. And on the left navigation pane, about halfway down, you have a tab that says group enrollment. When you go to put your group enrollments in, that's where you're going to go. And from here, once you click group enrollment, your submitted enrollments page is going to show up. When you need to add a group enrollment, you use the blue add group enrollment button right here. And then this will bring up the group enrollment sheet, basically, that we've been using for eternity when tracking group enrollments. So the program name, anything with the red required, obviously is required. Anything that doesn't have that is not, but if you have the data and you know it's good data and accurate, and you want to be a great data steward, please provide it. So we'll call this one support staff camp. And then the start date, we'll say is today. End date, I don't have that information. The 4-H year is going to default to 2020, 2021. This looks like a drop down. In some states, they do what we used to do, where we would do our group enrollments. We would allow group enrollments to be entered for a few weeks after our program year ended. Since we're not doing that anymore, this won't ever have a drop down to be a different year. This is just this year. So delivery mode, like I had mentioned earlier, there's that non-spin club. So if you have something that's like a very specific program that wouldn't fit into any of these other ones, but it is not truly a spin club and how it operates, you would use that non-spin club. I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw that there were two different ones there, and then which to use. So this is support staff camp, and we're trying to capture all those people who are not already in the database with an enrolled profile. So I'm going to put this under just a general 4-H camping program. I suppose you can put it under day camping or overnight, whichever matches up the best with your program is what you'll choose. Presenter, if if one person in your office does all the group enrollments, but there's multiple presenters, sometimes it's nice to be able to separate which programs were put on by which employees. So it might be good to put the presenter in there if you have it, or if you kind of are in that sort of situation in your office. Number of hours is required. Again, it has to be at least 6, or you can't count it aside from being car teams. And then number of youths in military families, this can be a 0, but it has to have something in there. Now, I had mentioned that we're not allowed to guess. So we're not allowed to guess if someone is part of a military family. So if a kid shows up with his mom and she's wearing an Army t-shirt, we can't assume that he is part of a military family just because she's wearing an Army t-shirt. So That's one of the things that we're not allowed to guess on. But if you have a sign-in sheet or some sort of registration form for your program and you ask the question and someone answers it, then you can officially put that number in there for whatever gets reported back to you. It has to be self-identified. So where we have projects, it's really easy. You just can pick any project that you would like off of our list of projects. There's a whole slew of them. Pretty much all the projects that we used to have in 1.0 came over to 2.0, as well as any additional new projects that we added to our repertoire this year from the family guide. So once you choose your project, you can hit add project. If you need to delete it, there's a little trash can. And then if you need to add a second project or third or fourth, whatever, hit add project. The system does not require you to use any project. So you can leave it blank if you'd like. Member distribution. So here's where, again, we get into we aren't allowed to assume anymore. We can't just guess by looking at someone to know how they're identifying, whether that's gender or age or race, ethnicity. We can't just go by what we see. In order to count on the distributions, people have to self-identify in one of these categories. So the gender distribution, these gender choices are what is asked during enrollment. So it's the same ones that we use during the enrollment process. Ideally, if you had 20 people here that attended your camp, maybe only 10 of those people were not already in the system. Okay, so this is support staff camp. I already have 10 of you in my 4HOnline system. So 10 of you are considered duplicates. Okay, so total 20 and 10 right here. However, if you don't know that there are 20 males because they did not specify that they were males, you can't put that they were males. So now we have this unidentified box up here at the top. So if you didn't ask or collect gender information, you're not allowed to guess. So you would put your total number of campers up here. Okay. But if you know that 10 of them are already in our 4HOnline system, you can put that there. And then that'll calculate your number for you. But just know that if you don't know what someone identifies with or how someone identifies, they have to be the ones to tell you how they identify. Then you don't pick for them, basically. So that's what your unidentified button looks like. If your support staff camp had no people that were already enrolled through the 4HOnline system, we've got 25 people that were part of our support staff camp and none of them are in the 4HOnline system yet, then we would put in 25. That puts down here our total for gender distribution at 25. So this number right here for gender distribution needs to also match the racial distribution total down here. It needs to match the residential distribution total down here. And it needs to match the grade distribution total down here. So again, for racial distribution, unless somebody specifies that they are one of these race or ethnicity groups, okay, we are not allowed to pick for them. So unless on a registration sheet or a sign-in sheet or some other way that you collect this information and they self-identify, then you can fill these areas in. Otherwise, this number of 25 right here needs to be 25 here if we don't ask. Okay. But let's say you do ask about residential. Okay. let's say that 20 people self-identified that they live on a farm, then you would put 20 in for farm. Rural, let's say the other 5 self-identified that they are from a rural area. Put it in. That gives your total to 25. And remember, this is where we're gathering the information on the people we don't already have in our system, okay? Grade distribution. Let's say that all the people that attended support staff camp were seniors in high school. Then if you know that because of your registration or because that's the people that you targeted to only be allowed to come to your camp, then you would put 12th grade in. And then that number matches up with all your other numbers as well. For volunteer distribution, so right now, there is no unidentified box that goes with the volunteer distributions. We have asked for that information. We've asked for that box. They have not given us any timeline of when we're going to get that box like we have, up here. So for your volunteer distribution, if you have volunteers that are helping you with your program, whether that be an adult volunteer or a youth volunteer, okay, we want to track these volunteers. And again, we're trying to gather information on people we don't already have in our 4HOnline system. So these will be people outside of who we're already tracking with an enrolled profile. Okay, so there's racial groups, and then Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic or Latino are your ethnicities. Just know that the totals down here need to match totals that are down here in these next areas called adult classification distribution and youth classification distribution. The classification focuses on direct and indirect contact. So if you had a volunteer that was present with you at the program and was helping you with the program and was physically there, that is a direct classification. If you had someone who helped you with your program by printing and distributing flyers or setting up the event or helping in some way where they weren't physically present at the event with you and the participants, then they're considered an indirect volunteer. Same goes for youth. So if you put any volunteers into your group enrollment, you just need to make sure that all of those totals match each other as well. These totals down here for the volunteer distribution area don't go with the participant distributions. So those don't have to equal, 25 in this example, because they're separate people. They're just your volunteers. And you might not have any volunteers, which means that this is all a moot point for you. But I just wanted to make sure that you saw that we can collect that info. And if we have it, great. And if not, that's okay too. The last part of the volunteer distribution is if there's any volunteers that are trained through 4-H that aren't already in the system, but we're training them on, how to volunteer or with what skills they're volunteering with, then you would use any of these options. But again, if you don't have volunteers, you don't fill any of this out. And then at the very, very bottom, you would click submit form and then hit save. The form will not save if it can't validate that all those totals matched. So if there's somewhere where those totals don't match, it will yell at you and throw up a red error, and you'll have to go fix that somehow. Recalculate your numbers, figure out what you calculated differently or incorrectly, or who you assigned to the wrong, whatever. Those numbers always have to match. And if they don't, the system won't let you proceed. If you need to make edits after the fact, back on your group enrollments tab, you'll notice that the group enrollment that we just put in shows up right here. You can always click that group enrollment, and there's an edit button in the upper right-hand corner right here. Once you are in edit mode, the edit button goes away, and then you can make any changes that you would like to make onto your group enrollment. So I'm going to change the delivery mode to it being a day camp program. And then that's the only thing I wanted to change. Everything else looks good. Save. And now my group enrollment has been updated. So really, that's all you have to do when putting in a group enrollment. In the 4-H Online County Resources folder on OneDrive, there's a hard copy or a Word document, I guess, of this form that you can print out. Some people like to have a form on hand that they can fill out at their events so that when they get back to their office, they don't have to go back and do any guesswork as to who was there and how many and whatnot. I recommend taking, a printed out copy of it with you just to save you some, head scratching later. I would also recommend putting group enrollments in as soon as you finish the program and not wait until the very, very end. That goes for next year as well. So I find that not waiting to the last minute to put all of these in is better than, you should be putting them in as you finish them. I will say though, that if you have a group enrollment, if you have a program that let's say is 3 days long and you're working with the same kids for those 3 days, you're still only going to put in one group enrollment because that collectively is one program. You wouldn't count that as 3 separate programs just because you went there 3 separate times. If it's all part of the same program, then you put in one group enrollment. Now, if you have kids that let's say the same kids came on Monday and Wednesday, but on Friday you had 3 new kids show up in addition to the ones that were there on Monday and Friday. Well, when you put your group enrollment in, you make sure that you have the, same kids that showed up on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. Those are your kids. Those are your kids that those are your participants. You count each kid once, not 25 kids on Monday, 25 kids on Wednesday, 25 kids on Friday, 75 kids. No, that's just 25 kids. They just happened to be with you on 3 separate days of a 3-day program. But on Friday, if there's 3 extra kids that showed up, your group enrollment is actually going to be for 28 total people. Okay. So just make sure that we're not counting our participants more than once for the group enrollment that we're putting in. Again, we don't have 75 kids. We've got 25 kids that we saw 3 times over the course of the program. And then those 3 extra kids on Friday that we add in for our total number of participants. That's pretty much all I had. So I see that there's some questions in the chat box. Let's see here. Let me go back. Okay. So is there a form to use for Real Money, Real World to gather the needed data for a group enrollment entry? So I don't know if there's a specific Real Money, Real World form, but I would imagine that you would put your Real Money, Real World group enrollment in the same way you would put in any other group enrollment. And like I said, on OneDrive in the shared folder, those the 4-H Online resources, that's where you can find the printout versions of the group enrollment form. Rachel, what's up?
Right. Okay. So my question is, and I don't know, this might affect other people too. Not everyone who submitted a 4-H Online enrollment got approved for this last year. So we have some county requirements that the kids have to meet in order to get approved. And so there's a handful of them that are not approved.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what should I do with those for like cleanup going into this next year?
Yeah, good idea. So if those kids are not going to meet their requirements for completing the year, we need to delete their enrollments for the year.
Okay.
Right now, there's no way to mark incomplete versus complete. So if your county, like yours, uses criteria like that and people aren't going to finish basically or get credit for the year, send me a list of those people and I will back out their enrollments for the year so they don't get credit for participating. Now I know
Okay.
that's not, I mean, it's not ideal because it'd be nice to be able to know who at least started the process and just didn't
Mhm.
finish it, but the system just isn't set up that way yet. So the only thing we can do right now to not give them credit
Mhm.
is to just back out their enrollment altogether.
Okay, so that won't affect their ability to apply for this coming year.
Absolutely not. Nope, because
Okay.
after rollover, so on November 1st, everybody's
Mhm.
file goes back to having the enroll now button next to it.
Okay, so I should get that sent to you then before rollover.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
good. I'm glad I asked then.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's see, there's another, how do I enter data for an after-school program that started in October and ends in December? Amy, I would figure out where the bulk of the instruction comes from or happens in. So if it is mostly in November and December, I would wait and just put that information in December or in the next program year, if it overlaps like that. I would just pick one program year or the other and put it in, but I would say put it into the next program year so that if you have any kids that show up, you know, that you need to add, then you can get them all included and we won't have to go back and figure out how to edit a past year's group enrollment.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, so can I create a report that includes demographic information? I need to enter the data for our day camps from this summer. You're wanting to create a report, Amy, that shows kids that you already put into a camp group. You want their demographic information or?
No, I haven't created any groups yet. I didn't know I was supposed to, and we don't have demographics for the kids that went to the day camps. So I didn't know if there was a way to pull it from their 4-H online info. So I don't
Well,
have to
if
individually.
it's kids that are already in 4-H online, you won't need to worry about their demographics because by adding the camp group to their profile, it's already all linked up.
Okay, gotcha.
But if it's the kids that are not already in the system, if you didn't collect that data, then that's where you would use that unidentified box at the top, since you don't have that information and they didn't provide it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. The form is on OneDrive, so where all of the Buckeye Box stuff got migrated to, you know, you would go into the 4-H professionals file from there, 4-H online county resources or county 4-H online resources. Then there's a, okay, so she says, I see a youth group enrollment form. No, there is not anything that I have created for you to send out, basically because so many people do this differently. Some people, you know, might create a CVent thing. Some people might just have like a sign-in sheet that they make for that specific event. I'm going to leave that up to the counties about how you choose to collect that information. Or not collect that information if it's something that you don't feel comfortable collecting. Ideally, we would have all that information. So when you have an event, you know, if you have a sign-in sheet, it'd be nice to ask those questions on your sign-in sheet, let's say, or ask the questions on a CVent registration if you use it that way. So the youth group enrollment form that's in OneDrive is for you specifically to keep track of, you know, whoever shows up to your. Some people like to put it out on paper before they put it into the system. Are there any other questions? We've got about 4 or 5 minutes. Can we track 1.50 training in 4-H online for both in-person and online for the next program year? No, you will need to wait until November 1st to mark them for the next program year because they'll have new enrollments. So even if a volunteer has completed it already for next program year, they aren't enrolled yet for next program year. So you can't attach a training to them yet.
No, but I'm saying for next year, can we track both of those?
Yeah. You can track
Yeah.
both of them now if you'd like. There's an in-person and an online option in there.
Oh, okay.
You can train, or you can track both of the trainings that way if you'd like. But if they're using like this, like the Scarlet course or Canvas course that Jeff Dick
Mm-hmm.
told everybody about or has set up, that program kind of keeps track of those. But if there was any other type of online or in-person training that wasn't part of that Scarlet course, then you need to be tracking it in 4H Online. So
Gotcha.
that we can get a full picture of who officially was trained.
Okay, thank you.
And then Candy put in the chat that in your Real Money, Real World binder, that there's a form that you guys can give to the students to fill out that you can get the data from. So I guess Real Money, Real World has its own special form. I was not aware of that, but other than the Real Money, Real World form, there is not a standard data collection form for any programming that you do, since people do their programs so differently. Are there any other questions in the next 2 minutes?
I think I'm going to stop recording, so in case anybody's holding back any questions. So let me